Ruthy Doolittle. I'm an animal communicator and I want to talk to you about talking to animals. So some of you I know have experienced working with me. Nice to see you, Iris. And I want to share my lovely gift with you all. Just ignore the camera. And so if you haven't heard of animal communication, it's sometimes called animal whispering or heart-to-heart communication, or soul-to-soul communication, or cross or interspecies communication. So we all live in the animal kingdom, and we're humans, and you see here I've got cats, donkeys, dogs, but I've worked with all sorts, alpacas, bearded dragons, horses, wild lemurs, and everything in between really. So that's what I mean by cross or interspecies communication. We are all born with this gift. This isn't something that you have to be super special to be able to do. What you do need to be able to do is be able to quieten your mind to be able to listen to the way that animals communicate with us. They use telepathy, or all 6 of their senses. So as humans, when we're at school, our kids learn about 5 senses, but actually the sense that we use for communication is our intuition and our 6th sense, sometimes called our gut reaction. So I know that if I went into a really pinstripe type business meeting, I would talk about gut reaction rather than intuition, because certain words bring up certain things for certain people. But our gut reaction, our inner knowing, our innate wisdom is our intuition, and that's what I use. I've just learnt how to use my skills and practice and practice and practice and embrace my gift. I didn't always. I'll just go on to the next slide. So I'm going to go straight into some case studies, and I know that some of you will be really curious to see about these. So this is actually one of Teresa's doggies, little Daisy, little Jack Russell Terrier, and she became ill quite suddenly. Teresa reached out and was concerned about her. She felt that her eyesight was going and that her doggie was really confused. So I connected with her. I have worked with Teresa's doglets for some time, so we know each other quite well. And I did it remotely via a very recent photograph. And Daisy, what she did was she gave me an impression of what was going on for her. And it felt like this intense pressure in her head. And I asked her to tell me what that was. What did it mean to her? So she told me that she thought it was something like meningitis. Now, I'm not a vet, I can't diagnose, and I don't actually advocate that at all. I think vets do an amazing job, but they have their place. And so Daisy went off with her mum to the vets, and sure enough, she had developed an illness, which I have written on here. Optic neuritis. I've said that the right way. Optic neuritis, which is caused by meningitis. Because of this, and because Teresa was able to act really, really quickly and get her into the specialist, she's had treatment and she's making a good recovery, isn't she? She was pretty lively this morning when I saw her. So that was a fantastic way to be able to use animal communication for a sudden illness and to gain insight from the animal as to what was going on. So animals are naturally stoic in their nature. It's a sign of weakness to show any sort of illness. So they don't say to me, they don't give me everything. It's very filtered, especially when it's a physical pain. So I didn't get what she was feeling. I got her impression of it, which was this pressure on her head that was pushing her eyes forwards. When I asked her what that meant to her, she told me what she thought. That's a doggie's opinion. It's my interpretation of what she said. I can only share that information with Teresa and make suggestions on what's a good way to move forwards, which she did with haste, and the quick response meant that we were able to get treatment for her and not lose her eyesight. So that was excellent, wasn't it? Excellent. Here is a beautiful horse called Maggie, who was very, very anxious about moving home. So now, when I went to this home, wow, 6-star accommodation. If you've got horses, I'm pretty sure, I know Teresa and I aspire to have a house like this one day. The back of the house was all wide open, big, big, big windows, and everywhere you could see were the paddocks for her horses. It was absolutely beautiful. Her log cabin in the garden where she worked from home faced her horses. And she shared with me that she was very late to life. into the riding life, and she learnt as an adult. Now, lots of people in horsey land have been around horses all their lives, grown up with them, and there's an innate confidence with those people because of it. And she felt that she was disappointed in herself, that she felt after 2 years of having lessons every single week, that actually she had to admit that her and Maggie were a mismatch. Maggie had far grander plans for her life than the lady's riding abilities could ever match, even with the best riding lessons. She didn't have that innate confidence to be able to go and do nerve-wracking things like crazy cross-country courses, which is what her horse wanted to do. And she knew it, she tried it, but she had made a promise that if she was going to rehome a horse, and those that, if you don't know, horses can quite often get moved about from home to home. People outgrow them and then they get moved on. And actually, horses have a very strong desire to have one-person connection in their life. Those that have shared their heart with a horse will know about the depth of this bond. And the lady that was looking after her felt really, really concerned that she wasn't going to be able to find her the right home. But she had said to me and expressed to me that there was no way that the horse was going to be rehomed until she had found an equivalent 6-star home. So she wanted to know why Maggie had started behaving so badly. So her behaving badly in her beautiful 6-star home was biting all of the beautiful fencing that went all around the paddocks, kicking the door in the stable incessantly. If she wasn't kicking that door, she was kicking a gate. And the lady that looked after her was concerned that she was going to injure herself and potentially break out, which would then put her life at risk. This is like absolute dreamboat accommodation and facilities for a horse. So we went to go and chat with Maggie, who was very, very, very keen to talk to me and came trotting over, all blowing steam out of her nostrils. Who are you and what have you got to say? And boy, did she have some questions. Wow. So what was the farrier going to be like? Was it the same one? Because just remember, the last one was horrible and I don't want another one because he's really nice. So he has to come with me. And what trailer am I going to go? And when am I going? And am I going to have the same tack? And what about my riding instructor? And what's she going to wear? And what are we going to do? And honestly, the questions were out of this world. And I thought, this poor girl, you know, this lady's been at home. She's been like, oh, that's it. Yeah, I've got to get rid of her because I've got to admit it, I'm not going to be up to riding her the way that she wants to be ridden. Having these conversations, I'll find her a new home, we'll send her off. And this horse had all these questions about where was she going and what was going to happen in her life. Can you imagine how anxious you would feel if you had all of those questions about a move coming up and nobody answering them? So we had a chat, we shared the feedback with her. Now, you can't see it here, but just to the right of the picture was a big field shelter. Once I'd finished answering her questions, she ran off behind the field shelter and hid. Absolute silence. And so I said, well, she said, well, what do we do now? I said, well, I think we just need to wait because she's gone to think about it. And she literally had gone to go and think about all of these questions. And she kept peeking her head out and then she'd come back hiding. And then she'd peek out and she's like, no. Oh, and I felt her energy, this weight of tension on her shoulders dissipate and this relaxed feeling in her body. I said, I think she's going to come out in a minute. I think she's going to, oh no, she's going to come. And she came over and she was so much more relaxed about the move and she understood the reasons why, and she also knew that it wasn't just going to happen and she'd be packed into the back of a lorry. She also had some demands about what she wanted in what she wanted for the move. So she wanted to have a final groom with the lady that looked after her and the new person together. But before that, she wanted to have a pre-final groom, just so that she would know that she was going and that she could spend that one-on-one time with the lady that had loved her and was loving her. What an amazing, amazing insight. After that feedback was shared with me, I had a little message that said she had actually stopped kicking the gate and chewing. So it made a difference onto her anxiety levels, and she has gone on to a home very close by with the same farrier, and it's all gone really smoothly. So another case study of how having a communication can really help answer those questions that your animal has. This is Peep, who is actually Luke's bunny. And Luke had reached out to me and his wife had reached out because Bo Peep was behaving a little bit strange after she was bereaved. So her playmate Buttercup had passed away and she was just out of sorts. So again, an interesting observation that you may have experienced this with your own animals when one passes on, that the other left behind will experience real heartache like we do. They have feelings, they have emotions, they miss their companions. And although animals understand death and treat death very differently to how we do, when they're here on this plane and their best friend goes, they miss them, whether that's a furry friend or a human friend. So I went to see Bo Peep, and she's a lovely, gorgeous bunny. And actually, I've got a picture of her up in my office. She's very pretty. But she was really quite standoffish. She's not really into new people. So I had to really let her set the pace. And she made it clear that she didn't want me to be in her space with a little bang on her box. Bunnies can actually they can be very communicative verbally, so even if you didn't have the skills I've got, it'd be quite clear that she didn't want you in her space. So I got down onto the floor and I used a technique for getting my energy really, really low and helping animals feel safe. Lo and behold, she came along to have a little chat with me, on her terms. And she told me that she had been quite sad and that she didn't want a new playmate, that she particularly wanted Luke and Julia to spend time. She loved that time that she got with them, and she was quite okay with being an only bunny as long as she had the interaction from her lovely family. So just to say, Bo Peep tends to keep her distance from people, but Ruth gently built rapport and was allowed into her space. She reported back on her character accurately and let us know that she did not want a new companion, which really helped us and reassured us. Ruth balanced Bo Peep's chakras, and at the end, she was conked out, really relaxed in a deep sleep. Luke's nodding over there. And actually, Luke sent a picture on Facebook a few months afterwards with Bo Peep had learnt a new game which involved soil from the garden. You can imagine, she got it everywhere, and she was just having so much fun. So she'd been able to move on from a particularly painful time. So never underestimate the impact of grief, whether it be human or animal, on your own animal. Oh, this beautiful girl, Lottie. So she was an unsocialised and neglected Norwegian Forest Cat. She came from a breeder's in a kind of rescue situation, so she hadn't done well at all. She was really, really skinny. So if you know anything about Norwegian Forest Cats, you'll know about the breed. If you don't, that's okay. They're quite big. Like the little black one that was in here earlier is tiny. These are Norwegian Forests, a big cat, and they have a really thick coat. In fact, they have a double coat so that they can be outside in the sub-zero temperatures, and their fur on their feet grows between their toes, so they've got more of a furry foot than a bald or pads exposed foot for being outside in the snow. They're normally quite bold in character. This little girl was not, and she hadn't been, much like Georgia was talking about earlier about the key stages in development. If a cat isn't socialised properly, they won't have the right tools in their makeup to be able to cope with adult life. So not only wasn't she socialised with other cats, but she wasn't brought up in a home, so she didn't know what all sorts of things were. She didn't know what a washing machine was, she didn't know what laminate flooring was, she didn't understand all the noises that went on in a home. She was very, very skittish. And she was so skittish that I had to do that communication remotely with her. And I did distant Reiki healing, and I did a custom back flower remedy, which is plant essences, to help her gently support her emotionally without doing any hands-on stuff, because it would have been far too much for her. And lo and behold, slowly, slowly, like a beautiful flower, she started to blossom. And as she gained weight and gained confidence being in the home, she developed this newfound rapport with another rescue Norwegian Forest Cat in the same home. Now she wouldn't purr, that was the other thing. Not a single purr, not even a nervous purr, a scared purr, or a happy purr. Nothing, no purrs whatsoever. And I had an update from the lady that looks after her 2 weeks ago, and it said she's purring, and not only is she purring, but she's coming and asking to have cuddles, and she's playing with one of the other cats in the home. So we might have just accepted that this cat was awkward and unsocialised, but actually her quality of life has been vastly improved by a little bit of communication and a little bit of gentle support. And this is in the same home. This is another Norwegian Forest Cat. Sumi. Sumi, as you can see, she's very, very unhappy. So Sumi came from a similar situation, a pedigree type environment. She had been, apparently she'd been sold and homed, and then she'd come back to the breeder. So good breeders will actually take their animals back if they don't do well in their home. But what tends to happen is then the breeders end up with all sorts of mismatched animals that aren't going to make good pets. So the lady said she was going to take this Norwegian Forest Cat on as well. Here she is when she arrived. The first time I saw her, her face literally sunk like this. She's really standoffish, really terrified. Now she had, her story's really sad. So she'd had a baby, she'd had a pregnancy, and she'd only had one baby, and her baby had died. She then got an infection, and because she was in a home with lots of other cats, and they play, they're like dogs, they run around like lunatics together, big pussy cats, and she had to be isolated, and in that time she got very depressed. I'm pretty sure you're already aware that our animals do suffer from things like depression and anxiety, and what we do to them in their environment and how we handle them can make a huge impact on their recovery. As you can see, the transition from one slide to the other slide is tangible in her face. She is such an expressive girl. All we did with her was communicate with her and ask her what she was sad about, what we could do to help, what did she need, and her requests were, I need peace and quiet, I need space, and I need a place to go and hide that I can call my own. Through time and through allowing her to be heard, give her a voice and be heard, she built up her confidence. She learned that the other cats in the house were actually okay, that she was sad that her baby hadn't made it and that she wouldn't be able to have another baby. She felt that trauma like women feel that trauma when they have a C-section, the same with our doggies. Now she is relaxed and happy. She's actually really demanding, and when you go to the house, she is the first cat on the scene. Who are you? What's going on? Why are you here? Come and see my toys. Come and see where I sleep. She's a really sociable girl. Again, just by listening to her needs, her wants, and responding to them in that environment. I've seen her 3 times in person, and she has blossomed from just having that bit of connection. Oh, this is a rescue bearded dragon. So this is actually my rescue bearded dragon, Alduin, but I went to see a lady and her 3 dogs last week. I hadn't planned to speak to her dragons, but they both made themselves very well heard that they wanted to communicate with me. One that came to the front of the tank and banged on the glass. Hello, hello, hello. And so I said to her, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to communicate with your dragons because they're both demanding that I talk to them. The dragons that I saw, and this dragon in particular, they have really specific needs, So this is Alduin. When he arrived, I was absolutely fascinated. He's a beautiful boy. I think he's a beautiful boy, and everyone that comes to our home says so too. He's got such character on his face. But when he arrived, he was in a bit of a sorry state. He hadn't been well looked after. He had been loved. It wasn't the boy's fault at all. He was doing the best he could with the resources that he had. But he didn't have the right lights, and he hadn't been fed the right food. So he was quite thin, and he was quite lethargic. And I was so excited. I was like, oh, bearded dragon, wow, they're so ancient. And I've never had a reptile before in my care. So what's he got to say? I'm so excited. I got down on the floor and he just went, whoa, lady, just be. And it was this really calm, really wise energy. And I was like, oh, I got so excited, sorry. So I had to take my cue from him. He just said he just wanted to settle in, adjust. We put the right lighting in his tank. We got him fed up. He needed a bath. After about 7 or 8 days, he was then ready to talk on his terms. But he asked me to, well, he actually told me to be, and then it was about putting his basic needs in place first, and then have a chat. The 2 dragons that I met last week that were banging on their glass, that came to the front of their vivariums, one asked for hoppers and the other one asked for crickets. I don't know what I'm being told. I'll just share when I go and visit people. And the lady burst out laughing and she said, well, that's hilarious because he doesn't like crickets and he doesn't like hoppers. So the fact they've asked for the ones that they do like is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And one of them he wanted to be out more, and the other one wanted to be more in his tank. He was like, I don't like going out so much, but I'd like a bowl of water that I can just kind of lounge in. But the other one, who was at the front banging, he's like, I want to come out more. I love it when I come out. And Alduin, he's a bit of a show-off. He likes it when people come round. Fluffs his little beard out. Again, without communicating with the animals, I wouldn't have gained that information to be able to share with, for us, with Alduin, but also for other people with their dragons, about what their needs are. And it's very, very common for us to just do what we want with our animals without necessarily taking into account what they want. So I just wanted to touch on, as a professional animal communicator, there is a strict code of ethics that we follow. I'm not going to go into it, it's 2 pages long, but there are some key things in there, and one of them above everything else is that you always need, unless the animal is at grave danger, that you need to have permission from the human carer before you have a communication, and I'll explain why. So animals have been waiting for thousands of years for us to listen to them, and I actually believe that the Egyptians were connected to their animals far, far deeper than we are today. But animals have been communicating to us. So when someone like me comes along and says, oh, hi, and they're like, wow, amazing, you can hear me. I've got a whole list of demands or requests or things I need or things unsaid. If they share that information with me and I haven't had permission from the human carer, and I take that information to them, that human may or may not do something with that information. And if they don't, I've opened up a communication with an animal and that set their expectations that something might change. And basically then I've walked away. So it's really, really, really important that I have got commitment from the person who looks after the animal, that they're actually okay with me being there and that they are going to implement what that animal suggests. Because what's the point otherwise? They've been waiting to talk. That absolutely, they've got so many key messages for us and they are our greatest teachers. But like I say, unless an animal is gravely in danger, then I wouldn't communicate with them. And the other aspect of being an animal communicator that's really, really important is my own commitment to my development. So just because I'm qualified as a communicator, that's not it. That doesn't stop here. It's like life. We're always evolving and always improving ourselves. And I would absolutely love, can't wait till I can, get on Georgia's workshop the weekend, because I'm seeing this more and more and more. People are asking me about their dogs and they need Georgia. I'm there, I'm able to give them a bit of advice, but I don't really know. I only know what I've learned from Georgia. So there's an example of how I want to improve my knowledge so I can better help my customers, spread the good word about animals who aren't understood, and how we can help them better. So I have a commitment to my own spiritual growth on this journey, and it's really, really exciting. I love learning, so that's brilliant. Okay, oh, this horse. Was that Murphy or BA? That's BA. Oh, this was hilarious. So this boy was a bit nippy, quite nippy when you had to watch him. But they don't just nip out of nowhere. If you watch the ears or you watch a slight quiver in the lip, you'll know you're going to get a nip. And he was really naughty, and his mum said, please can you help? God, he is a nightmare at the moment. And I said, okay, what do you mean? So he's quite young, he's 4, and he's got a brother. They're not blood brothers, but they live together. And his brother is 18, so there's a big gap. And they're both quite big, 17 hands, mainly black horses, and she's just a private yard, and she loves them. She takes them out for leisure riding. It's really her thing. A little bit of dressage, but really leisure is her thing, and she absolutely loves her horses. But BA here was being really horrible to Murphy, the older boy. Now Murphy's really gentle, super, does everything he's meant to. BA's, he's he's a juvenile, and he still hadn't quite learned about his manners. So he was biting Murphy, he was breaking out, he was stealing hay, he was being really disruptive. And his lady said to me, please would you come and have a communication with him and find out what's going on. Basically, what was going on was jealousy. So Mum felt that she wanted to maximise the time that she had with Murphy. Because he was older, she felt like she maybe had 5 or 6 years at best of him in his prime. So she was spending more time with him. And he didn't like it. So he throw his weight about and be a bit stroppy and have a little bit of a tantrum, and I'll take it out on that person as they go past, and I'll take it out on that horse as he goes past, and I'm going to eat her hay just because. So he was just throwing his weight about. So when I connected with him and said, you know, what's all this about? It was really like, I'm a stroppy teenager, and I want to do what he's doing, and what's he going out? I want to go out. It's not fair. So, so we had a communication about, well, what would you like? And he wanted some one-on-one time with Mum on her own. And he wanted to be made to feel special. So when I shared the feedback with her, she was like, oh my God, oh, I feel awful because I've totally been spoiling one and not the other, and it's not like that at all. Because I know I've got him for years. And then she said, but maybe actually I'm taking him for granted. Because have I got him for years? We don't know. We don't know any more with ourselves than we do with our animals. So it helped her redress the balance, and just read out what she said. Dear Ruth, every time you see my boy, he seems better, calmer and more relaxed. Thank you for helping us. Just a chat makes such a difference. And here he was. So when I'm working with the animals, especially horses, they will often start yawning as they're releasing. But his yawns were just brilliant. You look on my Facebook page, there's one, the yawn just before that, as his tongue comes right out. So he was releasing that pressure of what he was feeling. This is probably the weirdest animal that I've worked with. It was a little possum when I was over in Houston, in Texas. So I went to stay with a colleague, an animal communication colleague, and we were having supper, and she said, oh, you've got to help me because we've got a resident possum. Very exciting because we don't have them here. And she said, and I want to bring her in, but she won't have it. She won't have it. I keep encouraging her to come in, and then all that happens is she disappears for a few days at a time. So I said, okay, well, she is a wild animal. Let's see what she's got to say. Now, this is just on the outside of a window. So this house that we were in was enormous. I don't know if you've been to America, but every house I saw was vast, and their hallway was absolutely enormous. But at the front of the hallway was floor-to-ceiling glass with a little windowsill about that height. And that's the possum on the other side of the windowsill. So she had a little area just outside the hallway. So you could get really close to her, but you couldn't touch her. She's a wild animal. And the lady really wanted to keep her safe. So where they live is very prone to flooding. And since I've been back, it did flood terribly. It was sort of 12 feet high with flood water. So she wanted to bring her in so that if anything happened, she'd be able to move her to safety quickly. This woman truly loved animals, but this is a testament of how our love for animals can be a little misdirected. So she was like, please can you help her? Please can you help me? Can you have a communication with her? And I said, well, I can try. Remember the code of ethics? So one of the things you might have noticed is I don't use the word owner. Animals hate it. In fact, we hate it. I don't want to be owned. And our dogs and cats, horses, and our wild animals certainly do not want to be owned. So I say our humans, our guardians, our mum or dad, our carers. The lady that looked after this possum was really her feeder. That's pretty much how Possum saw her. So I connected with her and I said, look, I appreciate you're a wild animal. I'd just love to have a chat with you. She says, well, you're connected with that lady. I don't want to go in her house. And I said, no, I gathered that. You're a wild animal. She said, why would I want to go in there? I live out here and she feeds me. And she put a little shelter outside for me. So I've got a little shelter outside if it's really grotty. And she politely asked for space and to back off. And I said, oh, I'll share that. I will share that with my lady friend here, of course. And she goes, I mean, what more does she want? I quite like it. I mean, I brought my babies here. Isn't that testament enough? So when I shared that feedback with compassion and loving kindness, the lady was able to understand how her love had actually been a bit oppressive for Possum. Possum didn't need to be cuddled like a needy doggy might. She needed that space to be held for her, to be safe and to be loved and fed, but not to be expected to be in the home. Oh, this is an amazing story of Bobby, black and white cat. So he's a tri-cat, and the lady contacted me asking me to help because he'd had an encounter with a doggy and it didn't go very well. They tried to save his leg, that didn't work. He would have died if they didn't amputate. Now he's a big black and white cat. Here he is in recovery, looking quite bright actually, sleeping where he's starting to heal up on his leg, and then this is after the stitches are out and he's out in the garden. Now what was interesting about Bobby is that he and his owner they intuitively used colour therapy between them to help in his recovery. Sometimes I will guide people that I work with to use colours with animals that are recovering, animals that are anxious, animals that are hyperactive. But it's interesting to see how an animal and the human involved in the recovery were able to do this naturally. So when an animal has had surgery, pale blue is a really good colour for them, which is here, a light blue here in the tray, in his crate. So he was confined into quite a small space. Green is the colour of the heart, and green is very, very uplifting. Here it is in the back. Yellow is a lovely energising colour without it being too feisty. So lovely, soft, supportive colours to help him in his recovery. Remember, when an animal comes out of surgery, they are on medicated drugs. They're in a very vulnerable place. He's confined. He's missing his physical leg, although that, like humans that have phantom limbs, the same happens with animals. So this was all about balance to support him with this really tender, vulnerable stage. Light pink is also a colour of the heart chakra, and it's really supportive and nurturing, which she wanted to encourage deep sleep and rest. He did that a lot anyway, but that supported him. Now, once he was starting to feel more confident, yes, he was wary of what was on the other side of the fence, but where sunbeams were concerned, he wasn't too fast. Now, red actually relates to our root chakra and is a really strong colour. Ladies, if you need a bit of confidence, put a bit of red lippy on, or a nice red jacket or a red scarf. It makes you feel really, really confident, and it gives you lots of energy. You wouldn't give it red to a hyperactive dog, and if there was a lot of red around a hyperactive dog, I would be suggesting to remove that because it fires them up even more. Here, he's recharging in the sunbeams, but he's actually got that red, the lovely red vibrant of the flowers to help pick him up. What was interesting about this boy, Bobby, was that he was fine. His mum was still very affected by the trauma because she found him literally as it had happened, and she nursed him through the whole journey, which was very traumatic, especially when his leg wouldn't heal and they had to make the decision to amputate. He was so fine about it, and I said to him, like, Mum's really worried. How do you feel? And he's like, look around. I've got everything I need. A massive bed in every room, all the food on time. She worries all the time. I'm totally fine. He wasn't fazed about it. Yes, sure, he's not as smooth at jumping up the fence as he was when he had 4 legs, and that's what triggered Mum. It wasn't him that was worried about his 3-leg situation, but it was his mum. So I was able to give her comfort and help her feel more relaxed about her animal's needs because of what he shared with us. So you might be wondering, how can I learn about animal communication? You can. We have got it all within us. It's about tapping into the skill that we've got, enhancing it and learning to trust it. I have to say that trust was the biggest thing for me of all. I was in denial for a very long time. Can you imagine how crazy it is to be at an all-girls Catholic convent school in rural Southern Ireland in the 80s and say, I can hear those cows talking to me. I can hear it in my head. It's just not going to go down well. And I had to learn that what I was hearing and feeling was real, and that the voices in my head were not me going mental. A little bit crazy, yes, but not going mental. And it isn't always voices. Sometimes it's, when I was young, it was a feeling, the feeling of what was happening to the animals. I knew what was happening in the dairy trade, but I couldn't explain it. And I'd say, why are those calves making that cry? It sounds like they've been taken from their mum. And my parents, knowing how sensitive I was like, oh no, I don't think it's that. That's just cows making a noise. I knew it wasn't. And when I went to work on a dairy farm myself, to go and see with my own eyes as an adult, that is what happens. And I knew I could feel it. And feeling is my predominant sense with my abilities. But I do get words. Sometimes I get a little video like plays out in my head, or a picture or pops up into my head. They're all part of my intuitive guidance, and we all have it, except you might not relate it to animals. So how many times have you thought, oh, I just put an umbrella in there, there's no rain forecast, but I'll pop an umbrella in there, and then later on, lo and behold, oh, I needed that. Or how many times have you gone out and you've gone, oh, I thought I needed to pack that in my bag, and I was like, oh, don't be silly. Or what about buying or renting a house? How do you know that one of the biggest decisions you're going to make in your life is the right one? Because of your feeling? So learning, one of the key things is practice, but a big part of it is belief that it is possible. If you're not open to it being possible, then it will, of course it's not going to work. Absolutely not. But if you're open to the possibility that we only use 10% of our brain, and we certainly don't know everything about what goes on in the universe, and you have that open curiosity, that is going to really help you. The other key thing about animal communication is being able to quieten the mind. So we got so used to being really busy and thinking about our to-do list, and have I done that, and I need to be there, and I must post that, and oh, it's someone's birthday, and all this stuff going on in our minds. If we can't quieten that, we will never be able to listen to the gifts that are inside of us. Children do it very, very naturally, and their logical brain hasn't developed. It sort of kicks in between 11 and 14. And once the logical brain kicks in, and us adults, our logical brain is well established, it makes it harder to be open to the possibilities. Children don't have a problem with it. In fact, a lot of children do it quite naturally, or have imaginary friends or invisible friends, or tell you that the animals can talk, and adults tell them that they can't. Don't be silly, you made that up. That can't be true. So that being able to quieten the mind and that trust that it is possible. Being still and setting the intention that you're going to have a good communication is also part of the process. You know that I'm going to have a really good day today, and the day tends to go okay, or oh, it's just going to be one of those days. When you say that, and then what? Another thing happens, and then another thing happens, and then another thing happens. So it's working on those principles. Bruce Lipton, if you're curious about learning a bit more about this, Bruce Lipton is a really fantastic person to look up, because this is his area of expertise. Intention is phenomenal. Now, the other thing is the weird stuff that happens in my work. If you haven't done a little scan of your body before you connect with an animal, how can you know an animal's giving you a message or not? So I know I've got a bit of an ache here at the moment. So if I was going to connect with a dog, I'd be mindful that that's mine, but there isn't anything else going on for me physically, sensations. So if I suddenly got a shiver up my spine, I'd be looking for, is there an injury? Is it that their chakras are out? What's going on energetically or physically? They can give you a sense of what's going on for them. I remember working with a horse, and I was literally salivating over this hay, like, oh, this hay is amazing. What's the matter with you? You don't eat hay. Oh, my mouth is that you? Do you want the really sweet hay? Right, okay. So she'd given me the taste and the desire, like it was a favourite biscuit or something, only it was hay for her. So it's learning to listen with all your senses. And this is something that we're not brilliant with because we don't promote our six senses. Kids get taught at school about the 5 senses. So it's actually opening ourselves up to all of those and connecting with our 6 senses. And there are lots of things that you can do, but a really simple thing to connect with your senses is just guide yourself and take a meditative walk, 10 minutes. You don't have to sit cross-legged and and all the rest of it. You don't have to do that. Have a walking meditation, and for a minute, just focus on your breath. Really connect to your breath. Feel it rushing through your nostrils and your mouth as it comes down into your lungs. Feel it go out of your body. Feel, is it cold as it comes in, or is it warm as it goes out? Really tune into the breath. Next, focus on what you can hear for 1 minute. Listen to every sound. Can you hear your breath coming in and out? Can you hear the birds? Can you hear water? Can you hear other people breathing? Can you hear your feet as you're walking? When you practice connecting to your senses, your attention goes on your senses, so the energy goes there. And what happens is you expand the sensitivity of your senses and your connection to your senses. Next, focus on your sense of smell. What can you smell as you're walking? Can you smell the air? Next, move on to what you can feel. You feel the air. You can feel it on your hands. You can feel it coming in and out of your nose. What can you see? Not just like what can you see, but what can you see in the periphery here? What can you sense? So I'll talk about sense on the next slide. So that's a really great practice to be able to start to connect with your senses and trust that your senses are working for you. Our animals haven't got all of this human baggage that we've got, so their senses are amazingly powerful. And the only reason ours aren't, apart from the fact that our noses aren't built the same way and our hearing isn't built the same way, but that we don't use them, we don't engage with them as much, especially in the digital age. And I know that people here aren't necessarily digital addicts, which is a great thing, but the children of this generation definitely are having those problems. So encourage people you know to connect with their senses and learn to use them to increase your intuition. This is a beautiful little pug girl that I worked with. So the lady, she had a cesarean, it didn't go well, and she had to be put to sleep. They weren't going to be able to save her. It was a really sad story, and this little girl, Paris, was this lady's absolute sweetheart. Pugs can be really adorable lap doggies, and she was a fine example of that. So she very suddenly had to be put to sleep, which was tragic for the family, and they were devastated. So she reached out to me and asked me if I could connect with her, because she actually had, as a human, she had loads of guilt. And she'd done the right thing. Was it too soon? Was she in pain? Was she suffering? Did she hold a grudge against her? All these normal feelings this human was having about this animal. And we've had to make tough decisions with our animals. That's part of the responsibility. So I connected with her, and she said, you know, Mum feels terrible, but she really mustn't, because she did the right thing. And it was my time to go. If I hadn't got an infection, something else would have happened. Something stupid, like a thing would have fallen on me. It was my time. I'm not in pain, I'm really happy, and I want her to know that I love her dearly. So when I shared this with her, the lady was really touched, and she said to me, what can I say, truly amazing. I lost my beautiful pug girl, Paris, and I was so upset. But after Ruth chatted to her after she'd passed, she told me how happy she was and that she knew she was loved, and the human was much happier. And I miss my baby every day, but I now have comfort knowing she's pain-free and happy. Thank you so much. So I do work with people that have been bereaved from their animals, and this can provide a great peace of mind. And this is my final story from my experience, and this is a particularly sad and tragic story with a really happy ending. So I went to see a couple who had tragically lost their 4 cats in a house fire. So the couple, Rob and Jackie, Jackie was away when the fire broke out, and Rob ended up in hospital for quite some time. He was quite traumatised by the fire. Imagine waking up and you've lost everything, absolutely everything. Weirdly, I'd been in a house fire and nearly lost 4 of my cats when I was a kid. So, funny how the universe works, but I knew from my experience how important it was that I was there. And I didn't know what was going to happen. It was the first time I'd dealt with 4 cats all at once. I didn't know if they were going to come through as individuals or as a cat collective. And I didn't know what I was going to find with the humans that I went to see, because they'd been through a really, really difficult and tragic experience. As I drove down to Boreham to go and see them, I just gently wondered, I wonder what today's going to be like. And it's always on the right where I get my messages, they come this side. I got a ginger cat, then I got a white and black cat, then I got a black and white cat, and then I got a black cat. And I was like, oh, I wonder if these are the cats I'm working with today. Well, lo and behold, when I arrived and they shared the pictures with me, they were the cats. And I said to them, well, I kind of met them in the car on the way here. They came to check me out. Let's see if I'm going to have some accurate messages for you. So I connected with each cat one at a time. And they lost everything in their fire and they had to start all over again. And they had some pictures of the cats. And ideally, it's one picture with just one animal, but they didn't have that, and they only had what they had because of the fire. So we had to make do. But do you know what? Each animal came through individually. I was able to share their character and a key message for their people that gave them peace of mind and some answers, some closure on the situation. Now, the final cat that really proof in the pudding for me and for the couple that I was working with, I remember my teacher, as it was happening, I was thinking, this can't be right, this can't be right. But I heard my teacher saying, every detail is important, every detail is significant, don't leave them out. So what was happening for me was I was getting a great big, massive roast potato that was hot and steamy, and as I bit into it, it was really gorgeous and fluffy in my mouth. And then I'm thinking, this can't be right, roast potatoes? And then I got like a big roasting tray with some sort of roast meat in the middle and veggies around the outside. And I'm thinking, oh, I really want to eat this. And I thought, I don't really know what this is, but I'm sharing this. I'm going to share this with the people. I said, roast potatoes. They burst out laughing, like belly laughs, absolutely burst out laughing. I thought, well, that's a good sign. And for how heavy and tragic the situation and that session was, the laughter was actually really, really good, because laughing is a release. If you don't laugh, you cry. And it also lifts your energy and your vibration, how you feel. So I was like, that in itself is therapy. And that's not me that's done that. That's come from this animal to make Dad laugh. They burst out laughing and they shared with me, he loved roast potatoes. And when we went away, if we went away for one night, we would just make a big roast and we'd put it on the floor, tuck it under the table, and the cats could just tuck in to the roast while we were out. It was his absolute favourite. So I've had some feedback from the couple, and so Rob was really, really traumatised afterwards and in a really difficult place. Since then, they've gained a huge amount of peace of mind and comfort knowing that their animals do still visit them in spirit, and that he has gone on, he's been in 3 films, he's been on a local theatre, which has helped with his recovery, and he has actually now found employment. So his life has completely turned around. I'm not saying the communication was what changed everything at all, but it was certainly the start of his recovery. So it can be hugely, hugely healing for people to have an experience like this. Here's a little bit about my journey. I'm not going to go into all the details. I haven't always been a professional animal communicator, but I have spent my whole life working with animals. And that started with my very first story that I wrote about a little goldfinch that I rescued in 1982. I've worked, as I said earlier, I worked on a dairy farm in New Zealand. I wanted to go and see what happens firsthand myself. And the people that ran the farm were lovely people. They weren't unkind to their animals, but the industry is a very different industry to what it used to be. And I wanted to go and see that myself. I've worked on farms in Tasmania, I've done conservation work in Madagascar, I've worked as an Irish wolfhound stud, I've done all sorts of different things. I've had my own horse, I've grown up with donkeys and mules, I kept ferrets, I've had all sorts of experiences myself. But I started on my professional journey after this little lady came into my life, Zanzibar, this rescue cat, in 2012, and I couldn't avoid the fact that I could hear her in my head, clear as a bell, telling me exactly what she needed. In fact, I got in an animal communicator myself to communicate with her, and she told me exactly what the cat had been telling me. So it was then that I started to explore studying animal communication. Now, you can't go to university and study animal communication as a degree, but there are plenty of courses out there that you can study and people that you can learn from. I've learned with James French, who's a leading expert in the UK, as is P. Horsley. I've also studied in America, and like we talked earlier about the Code of Ethics, I'm committed to develop my knowledge and understanding about animals, and I believe that will be a lifetime's work. So I have been blessed to be on TV talking about my work as an animal communicator. I've been in national magazines, international news, I've been published in 15 countries around the world. I've even been on This Morning TV and in animal communication for Hollow Willoughby's cat. Oops, nearly slipped up there. But most of all, I mean, they're all like super accolades, but I have to say, it's all very surreal going on TV and doing all of this stuff. Ultimately, what I love is my connection with animals and being able to help people find answers to the questions they have about their animals. Here we are. My love of animals is my very first budgerigar, GB, for Green Bird. He was amazing. And these are my first donkeys that I had, Noddy and Jack, when I lived in Ireland. I've always been around animals, and it just makes sense to finally be true to who the essence of me is as an animal communicator. Little final slide is about simple things you can do at home. So this is one of my rescue rats, and this is me on FaceTime to my little ratty. You can see she is on the phone to me. So talking to your animals has way more impact than you realise. They understand most of what we say and most of what we think. Tell them if you're going away. Be mindful that they will miss you, they will notice the change in routine, and they will want to know when you're back. People can be very dismissive, it's just a rat. Well, she's a rescue rat, and she gets really upset when I'm not at home, when she doesn't see me. That's our little routine. Talk to them. Their sensitives are way more sensitive than ours. So do you have to have the Hoover on with them in the room, or can they be moved out? If you've got building work going on, it's going to unsettle them. Toxins in the home, painting, smells really intense, open the windows. Changes cause anxiety. Talk to them about what changes are coming, talk to them when the changes are happening, and tell them about what's happened afterwards. And ceremony, I've put on the bottom about when they pass on, honour their spirit, honour their impact on your life. They are your best friend, so why not treat them in that way? Some of my animal friends and some of the animals I've worked with, and this was what I wanted to share, messages from animals. So our animals can give us messages. Here I am working at a desk, it's very clear, my cat says, you need to stop doing that, come on, put your pen down, get off your computer, wrap it up. That's pretty obvious what she's doing. Who else has their animal stomping over the keyboard, or the dog's at the back door, take me out for a walk? Yeah, absolutely. But we can get messages from animals in spirit too. So has anybody ever noticed a cat or a dog's shadow in their home or around them? A few nods, yeah. So they can come. So although their body isn't alive, the soul is eternal. They have a soul just like us, and their soul's eternal, and they will come and see you. You might notice, you think, oh, the cat's asleep on the bed. No, there's no cat there. That's a spirit coming to you, a spirit of an animal that you've loved coming to you. But you can also get messages from mythical animals. you can get messages from animals that you've never met. So spirit animals or spirit totems, so mine's a unicorn. So I see unicorns, I'm very drawn to them. I don't actually see like a unicorn come waltzing in, like physically, I'm not that crazy, but I'm very drawn to them in stories. They've come to me in my dreams. I make connections with people that have that same draw. And if you're not sure, look up spiritanimals.com, because it might be that you keep seeing a particular animal. It might be a bear. And you're like, why do I keep seeing bears everywhere? Go to spiritanimals.com, look up the meaning of bear, and then think about the message that bear has for you. So you can work with me personally, or you can work with me virtually. So I work with photographs, or I work with animals in person. And these are my contact details. So if anybody's got any questions, please do reach out and let me know. I'd be delighted to hear from you.